Hello and welcome back to our next session. I'm delighted to introduce to you Chief People Officer Susie Bates from Weber Shandwick and Enoch Lee, founder and managing partner at Therapy. They are going to be in conversation today, really looking at market nuances. So over to you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to This Can Happen conference. I hope you have been enjoying yourself so far. The session that we're looking forward to right now is called Empowering Employee Communities, an APAC Regional Journey with a Market-Centric Approach to Mental Wellbeing. I am Enoch Lee, and I'll be the facilitator for this session. And I'm really thrilled to be joining This Can Happen conference again, and I've been involved over the last few years. I'm the founder and managing director of Therapy, a consulting and training company based in Beijing, looking at building sustainable workplaces that put mental health at the forefront of their agenda. So I'm really, really thrilled to be here and moderating this session. I also teach the topic on leadership development on executive education programs in business schools, because I personally think that this has to go hand in hand with thinking about it from a leadership perspective. And so really, it's an honor to be speaking with Susie Bates, who's the Chief People Officer for Weber Shandwick, to hear from her leadership roles on what she thinks about the topic. Now, as we were getting to know each other just before the session, what really, really fascinated me was I discovered that Susie grew up in the 70s and 80s in Beijing. So myself being from Hong Kong and living in Beijing, I can probably say Susie is even more Asian than I am. And I've actually not been taking up the challenge to see if she would correct my Mandarin accent, because I'm from Hong Kong. I speak with a Cantonese accent in Mandarin. So, lovely to have you here, Susie. As a quick intro, Susie, as I said, is the Chief People Officer for Weber Shandwick Collective in Asia. And she's been living in Asia Pacific for more than 25 years. She holds multiple people and HR leadership roles in multinationals, and most recently at Weber Shandwick actively developed the Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Asia Pacific strategy since 2021. So we're really looking forward to having you here, Susie, to hear about your experience, sharing with our audience on what we can think about when we talk about mental well-being for employees in Asia Pacific, particularly with all its nuances and its differences and similarities in the region. And maybe we can start off a bit with, can you give us an overview of your company's approach to mental health in the APAC region?
Absolutely, I'd be delighted to, and thank you for that lovely intro, Enoch. Feel really good now, set to go. So Weber Shandwick globally has had a commitment to DE&I for many, many years. And I think here in Asia Pacific, it's the last couple of years with the various events across the world, it sort of prompted us to start really looking at the development of something in our markets and across the region in terms of the DEI space. And we wanted to utilize the platform that we had built across all of our markets and bring into that the work that we're doing in the mental health space as well. So I'll just take a moment to share with you kind of the journey, if you like, because I think that might be helpful for people listening in. So we decided, in Asia Pacific, you can't take a one-size-fits-all approach. You can't look at a regional plan because the markets that we operate in are so very different. So we basically empowered teams of employees across all markets to be the voices in their own markets. Initially they took the DEI mantle. They owned every aspect of the DEI journey in each of the markets. And that's been going on now for about 3 years. And I will say the teams have really grown in terms of strength and impact with the teams that are now pretty firmly established. And so that was work that was happening over the last 3 years. So in January this year, we took this to the next level. And this is where we started our first year of a 3-year partnership with This Can Happen. And the partnership was it was really developed to emphasize our commitment to our employees, that we've been working hard with them to really look at how we can make sure employees are feeling heard and feeling empowered to really speak out about the things that matter for them. An add-on that we made mid-year was we invited employees to put their hands up to become mental well-being advocates in their markets. So we now have volunteer employees in each market that we're positioning as the kind of the touchstone, if you like, for employees to sort of go to seek advice, to sort of, you know, a touch point to say, where do I go for support on a particular issue I might be feeling? And so we've kind of, we've jumped on the platform that we'd established in the space of inclusion and belonging, and brought the mental well-being piece in because it was already very well established. Yeah, and it's working really well, I have to say.
Yeah, that's lovely to hear. You know, I'm curious because in some of my work with other companies, and I'm sure actually some people listening on will have the same question, is it's great to have the local approach, and then for a lot of multinationals, because there's always a global strategy. How do you
Right.
align this approach in your Asia Pacific region and in the local countries with the global mental health strategy of the whole company?
That is a really great question. And, you know, I get asked this all the time is, how do we make global happy and follow what global wants us to do and yet be tailored for our region and for our markets? So, I mean, we're really lucky in Weber Shandwick in the collective because our CEO, Gail Hyman, she has committed to become the employer of absolute choice in the mental health space across the world. So
Right.
we already had that platform of immense support to really start to develop things ourselves. And we basically have been educating up and saying, a one-size-fits-all won't work. We can't take a global plan and throw it into Asia Pacific. So I think for companies listening, educate up to the point of, we love what you're doing. We might be able to take elements of it, which is what we have been able to do, is to take elements of the global thinking and build them into our own planning. So we also have a partnership that North America signed up. We're a North American based company with a company called Project Healthy Minds. And they are a US based firm. I don't know if you've heard of them, Enoch. But they basically are looking at bringing tools to leadership to help leadership really understand, what do we need to be doing as leadership? How can we be supportive? How do we know what to look out for? How can we bring, you know, one of my big passion points is normalizing conversations, right? And so we committed, or Gail rather committed, that every leader across the world would receive some training from United Minds. So there was kind of a synergistic approach for leadership, just in terms of what are the watch outs, what do we need to do, how do we recognize when somebody's struggling? And I think we were able to sort of take what has been trained across the world and tweak it a little bit, but then also roll that out for our leadership. So to answer your question, sorry, it's a bit lengthy, but I think we've listened to global, we've partnered with global, we've brought what we can into the region under that global thinking, and it's gone really well.
Yeah, I really like this approach because essentially you're saying, you know, there is a global strategy which we can align and respect with, and we're looking at how do we integrate that strategy in the rolling out, as opposed to, you don't understand as you're in global, which, you know, I've seen in some of the organizations as well, which, you know, maybe, and I'm guessing, you know, for some of the people listening, that is part of the tension that we encounter.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, to that point, I think the answer is, we're actually really blessed that Weber Shandwick Global have said, tell us. You know, and so I think, again, for people listening in across the region, really being able to have those are also critical conversations, right? I mean, we have critical conversations in our employee base, but the critical conversations up to global to say, we want you to help us, but we can't take this roadmap and drive it in Asia. It's just not gonna be effective. And I think we've done really good work across the world in terms of our global DEI leads, understanding that and embracing it and saying, you know what, you guys know best.
Yeah. So it's not just a two-way street, talking and listening, it's a multiple-way street in a lot of aspects.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, one of the things I also liked that you highlighted is actually, you know, in terms of the educating up, being cohesive for the leadership roles and distincting that, or just distinguishing that between this is your leadership role as a leader that you need to be looking out for, and then the actual mental health strategy for the local region, that's something that we can then think about customizing in terms of the cultural differences. And maybe this is a good segue to actually dig a little bit deeper into the local experience. Can you share some of the specific cultural differences that your company faced when you were looking at the different markets in Asia Pacific, and how did you create that nuanced strategy? And it'd be lovely to hear some of your stories as well of what goes on in the meeting room and the tensions and the discussions.
Lots of things go on, I will say, lots of things go on. And again, I'm so proud of the work that has taken place over the last 2 to 3 years with our teams on the ground in the markets. But I suppose to answer your question, I sort of go back to the one piece of advice anybody should take away from this conversation and from our own experiences: don't go for the one size fits all. Just don't. It's tempting to. It's really tempting to go in with an APAC plan, but it's not going to work. And so I think for us, in terms of cultural nuances, I will say this: things that are okay in some markets or acceptable in some markets might even be insensitive or even offensive in another market. Like it's that chalk and cheese across the different cultures in Asia Pacific. So this is why it's so important to make sure that you are looking at market level. And I think for us, taking that approach of empowering. So when I look back at the first year, we invited volunteers, come and sit on a group, let's have monthly meetings. And to your point, at the beginning, people were a bit sort of like, what's this all about? What do I need to do? Am I really safe? Can I really say what I need to say? And if I look at that 2.5 years ago, and I look at the last meeting we had last month, I mean, it's so impactful. The work that we're doing today is so impactful because we took that journey, and we did have to take baby steps. So what we're getting today are really market nuanced issues that are, we're not having to go out and find them. They're coming up to us from the employees by people who know and understand the specific challenges in each market that employees are struggling with, that are coming up to us, that we can say, okay, we might need to have an event that covers this topic or whatever. So it's really those local nuances. Biases exist, conscious and unconscious, frankly. And then, of course, the cultural sensitivity piece. But I think for us, it's been really being able to take it step by step, being able to listen, create that safe space. You read a lot today, the buzzword is safe space, but you've got to actually create it. You can't just say you've got it. You've got to have it for employees to feel that they're empowered to come up with any initiatives that are going to be really relevant to our employees. And, I still remember, I don't want to call specific markets out, but, in some markets when we just did an employee session on menopause, for example. And in one of our markets, our people, they said, oh, we can't talk about that. And we said, well, we know that it's very sensitive in your market. However, we as an organization, one of our goals is to normalize talking about it. Right. And we're not going to push it in everybody. It's optional whether employees join or not. But we need to start normalizing the fact that this is normal, it happens. And so it's really sensitive, I have to say. And I think because we're building those emotional bank accounts, if you like, with the market teams, we can have those conversations. And I honestly, Enoch, they're becoming more and more powerful. Some of the things that come out now, especially with our mental health advocates as well, it's like, wow, we're really learning about our teams and our employees.
Yeah, and of course, what you learn about them, it's not just restricted in mental health or in diversity, equity, inclusion. It also builds the better team. It builds the communication, it builds the productivity, it really just builds the whole company culture. And what I hear you say is like, it really takes time. It takes time. So we need to have some patience and not expect, we launch an initiative and 3 months down the road, we're like, well, what's the impact kind of thing.
And I think you're absolutely spot on. And there is this tendency that it becomes a tick box. Yeah, DEI strategy, tick. Market a couple of events, tick, and it's not. It's a journey, and actually there is no end to the journey, as you and I both know.
For sure. And this emotional bank account you talk about, I really like this idea, because I can imagine sort of investing in creating that space where colleagues feel safe emotionally, as you say, to talk about it. Because coming from Asia myself, being Chinese myself, I've experienced my own self-stigma when I went through depression and suicide attempts, and not being able to say that, thinking about face and all of it. And I'm sure you may have come across that in your organization as well, in that sense of, so if we do build that space slowly, then the whole idea of face doesn't become the hindrance in some ways. And that's what you're talking about when you're normalizing some of these conversations. Quite a delicate balance.
It's a very delicate balance. And again, when we first started, leadership were very curious, can I join the call? Can I? And I had to very tactfully say, not really. We don't really want you in, because we want this to be about the employees. So therefore it has to be by the employees. And gosh, that was then, and this is now. When I look at the maturity of the work, I'm really proud of it. I have to say, I'm really super proud of the work that's coming out of the groups.
Have you noticed, like, through these interactions, that the attitudes towards mental health in Asia Pacific region generally, has it shifted over the last few years? And how do you and your company, your team, respond to some of these shifts?
Again, great question. I mean, I think it's fair to say that in some of our markets, the mental health topic is still a taboo, like, let's not go there. And it's not okay to not be okay, because it's sort of, am I going to be judged if I call in and I say, I'm not sick, I don't have a sick note, I just cannot get out of bed because there's so much going on in my life, I'm just paralyzed from a mental health perspective. And I say that and it sounds okay, but in a lot of our markets, there would be a fear of judgment just purely on the culture of the market. That's one of the things that, as in Weber Shandwick, we're trying to turn that around and normalize it and make it okay. But to your question, I mean, yes, it's still very, very much a bit of a topic that is highly sensitive. And there's this sense that I'm perceived as being weak if I'm not doing well mentally. If I break my arm, okay, I've got a bandage on. But if I'm mentally just not able to face the day or the challenges of my role, I'm going to be perceived as weak. And then, so again, it's about how we can normalize employees in cultures that kind of almost condone that kind of behavior, if you behavior or the way of expressing it, and make it okay. And that's, again, that's not a quick fix. So
no, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so for us, it's encouraging the conversations. I think the more we have these sort of, so every quarter with This Can Happen, we've had all hands kind of gatherings, and pick these various topics across the year. And we're actually ending the year with men's health, which is really exciting because there's lots of things emerging there. But I think it's about having those conversations and inviting employees. You can join, you can post chat questions to me on the chat openly, you can send it to my private number. And gradually I'm seeing a shift. I am definitely seeing a shift around the conversations. And it's about, once we know what the topics are that really matter to our people, then we can find support for them, right? And it's getting to that table of telling us what they are.
Yeah. And actually you've answered my other question about, what are the specific strategies? And I hear you say, really encouraging the conversations, asking them, you've talked about also some being able to personally contact you. Here's your number, your work with This Can Happen as a partnership. So maybe I'd love to have this conversation for the next 3 hours, but we are tight for time. So in the last minute or so, can you share with us what are the plans for the future in terms of these specific strategies to continue improving mental health for your employees in the Asia Pacific region that you can share with our audience?
Absolutely. I mean, the work continues. As I said, it's not a tick box. It will actually never be over. So I think for us, it's really about continuing our partnership with This Can Happen into the next level. So I feel like this year has been the foundation year where we have started to actually normalize a lot of the work. We've started having conversations about slightly controversial topics like the menopause. We did a fun one on sleep and the importance of sleep. And more importantly, what happens when you don't get enough? Because in our industry, sometimes, we constantly hear people need to be on all the time.
Yeah.
So I think for us, it's really just about strengthening what we have built. So this has been the year of build. I think next year will be the year where we really start to grow and develop. And that means looking to our mental health advocates in the markets and saying, okay, what do we need to be giving you? Because they are the touchstones in each of the markets. What do we need to be giving you that will help us provide the resource for the issues that are coming to you in your market, if that makes sense?
Yes, very much so. Thank you, Susie. So if I could sum up our discussion, really the key point is to listen, take time, take the patience to build that trust the process, and we will see you on the other side. Thank you very much, Susie.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It's been really enjoyable having a chat with you.
Same.
Thanks, Ian.
And we wish you, everybody listening, enjoy the rest of the conference, and we hope to see you somewhere, sometime. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Susie and Enoch. Fascinating session, and Susie, always lovely to be working with you. So coming up next, we're doing a really fascinating session on fertility. We will see you shortly.